The verbs you've been dealing with in Greek up to this point have been called thematic verbs. That is, they have a theme vowel between the stem and the ending. So when we took a look at the middle of luo, we get lu, the stem. We get, say, our second person or first person plural, metha, and then we have to add a vowel, a theme vowel between that. So luometha. This next set of verbs are going to be called athematic verbs. They don't have this theme vowel. Now, we'll cover the simplest type of athematic verb in this lesson, but all of them are sort of referred to by a collective term called me verbs. And they're called me verbs because the endings are different, and the first person singular present active, so this top half is the present here. Present active is me, and then you get a sigma and sin, men, te, asin. And in the imperfect, nu, sigma, nothing, men, te, san. And of course the imperfect will still have your epsilon augment. In the middle, the nice thing about these are the same endings that you've been using for the middle already. So my, psi, and this sigma is going to stay in because there's no theme vowel, so there's no intervocalic sigma. Tai, metha, ste, ntai. And then in the imperfect, we're going to add the endings main, so, to, and again the sigma will stay there. Metha, ste, nto. So these are in the middle, they're the same endings that you've already been using. And I should say these are the middle passives, right? Because in the present and imperfect tenses, the middle and passive are the same. So let's take a look at this easiest of the me verbs, of the athematic verbs. Δείκνυμι, to show. And all verbs that have this pattern, that essentially are umi, are going to follow this. And actually newmi is what you'll be able to see in most of them. So newmi verbs. And what you get is the stem, δείκνου, and the ending. Nothing inserted between them. So δείκνυμι, δείκνους, δείκνουsin, δείκνυμεν, δείκνουτε, δείκνουasin. Most of these are going to be pretty easy to recognize. I think the second person singular, first and second person plurals, but you'll have to watch the me and the sin and the asin. So that's the present. And in the imperfect, we're going to take that same stem, but we're going to add an augment, and we're going to add those imperfect endings. So the imperfect, δείκνουν. There again, our stem. Not shortened, nothing, just add the ending right onto it. δείκνους, δείκνου, nothing there, just the stem plus the epsilon augment. δείκνυμεν, δείκνουτε, δείκνουsan. So that's why we call them athematic. We can just add the endings right onto them. And let's take a look at the middle and the middle passives here. So here's the present on top. We're going to take our stem and just add the endings right on there. So δείκνυμai, δείκνουσai, δείκνουtai, δείκνούμεθα, δείκνουste, δείκνuntai. So to find the stem of a me verb, just drop off the me. Add the endings right on. And in the imperfect middle and passive, epsilon augment again, just like always. δείκνυμεν, δείκνουσο, δείκνουto, δείκνούμεθα, δείκνουste, δείκνunto. So, they're athematic because there is no theme vowel on there. I can't stress that enough. What about imperatives? Well, the imperatives are going to have your regular imperative endings, just like you learned just a few weeks ago. But we're just going to add the endings right on to the stem. So δείκνου, δείκνουto, in the first person, or in the singular, so show, or let them show. And in the plural, δείκνουτε, and δείκνunto. You'll see these endings are exactly what you learned before. They just lack that theme vowel. And in the middle are passive, present imperatives. So these are present imperatives. I'll say a word about the aorists in just a second. δείκνουσο, δείκνουστο, δείκνυστε, δείκνυστον. Same old endings. Very easy. We're just adding them straight down to the stem. So the imperatives, no new endings to memorize. Just remember not to add that epsilon, which is usually in those, and sometimes the omicron as a theme vowel. Infinitives and participles, same way. The only catch is that the present infinitive, to show, present active infinitive, is a different ending, nigh. So δείκνυμι. This looks a lot like the aorist passive, doesn't it? And δείκνυσθαι, there's our sthai. We've learned this middle passive infinitive already. We add it just right onto the stem. And then for the participles, here we have δείκνους, δείκνουσα, δείκνουν, instead of on, usa, on. So δείκνους, δείκνουσα, δείκνουν. And then the stem is going to be unt. So δείκνουντος, δείκνουσες, δείκνουντος, and I think you can probably decline from that point forward. If we were to do the middle participles, it'd be δείκνου. We take our stem. We don't need the theme vowel, the omicron, so we can just add our men and our endings. So δείκνυμενος, δείκνυμεναι, δείκνυμενον, and so on. So no omenos, but we still have that men that we've accepted from the middle and passive participles with our endings. Now, is this it? Do you now get me verbs? Yes, for the most part. For δείκνυμι verbs, well, I should say not yet. But for verbs like δείκνυμι, which have newmi at the end, the future is perfectly regular. It's a thematic future. The aorist for these verbs, notice it's a weak aorist, and it will decline like a weak aorist, or conjugate like a weak aorist. The perfect and perfect active and middle passive, we haven't reached those yet, but those are perfectly normal. And the aorist passive, the sixth principal part, is perfectly normal. So for newmi verbs, the only thing that's different is going to be the present and imperfect. Everything else is like what you've already learned. Now there are going to be three other types of verbs, and I'll just give you a little hint of what's to come. And these are verbs like didomi, to give, or tithemi, to place. And in these verbs, first of all, what you'll see is that there's what's called reduplication. So you'll get a reduplication of the stem with an I in there. So tithemi, didomi. So one thing you'll see is reduplication. And the me verb aspects of these verbs are in effect in the present and imperfects. The other place where they're going to be in effect is going to be in the aorists, in the aorist active and middle. In these types of verbs, where the first principal part is reduplicated, the aorists are also going to have me particular aspects of me verbs. But we'll talk about those in future lessons. But for newmi verbs, if you know your present and imperfects, you know how to conjugate these verbs in any tense.